The alarm screamed through every corridor of Cravo Station, cutting through the usual hum of commerce and diplomacy that filled the massive structure. Commander Jake Morrison ran toward the command center, dodging panicked civilians from a dozen different species who rushed in the opposite direction. The station shook as another blast hit the outer shields. Jake burst through the command center doors to find controlled chaos. Station Director Velkthor stood at the center console, his forearms moving across different displays, while his translator barked orders in multiple languages. Morrison, thank the stars, Velkthor said, his scales shifting to a pale blue that Jake had learned meant fear. The Vorten separatists caught us completely off guard. Jake moved to the tactical display and felt his stomach drop. 20 Vorten warships surrounded the station in a perfect siege formation. The station's defensive platforms were already half destroyed, and the shields were dropping fast. Where's the Council fleet? Jake asked, already knowing the answer would be bad. 3 days out at maximum speed, Velkthor replied, his voice heavy with defeat. We have maybe 12 hours before shields collapse completely. Ambassador Lisa Chun arrived moments later, still wearing her formal diplomatic robes from the trade summit she'd been attending. Her calm expression didn't match the dire situation, but Jake had worked with her long enough to see the tension in her jaw. Have they made demands? Lisa asked. Surrender within 12 hours, or they destroy the station. Velkthor said, they want to make an example of us, to show the Council cannot protect its territories. How many civilians? Jake asked. 70,000, Velkthor said quietly. We're evacuating, but they're targeting the transport ships. Jake watched the tactical display update as another civilian transport exploded. 50 lives gone in a flash of light. We need to get our people out, Lisa said. How many humans on station? 230, Jake replied. Most are merchants and their families. Get them to docking bay 7. Lisa ordered. I'll coordinate with other species representatives for a joint evacuation plan. Jake nodded and opened the station-wide channel. To all human residents, his voice remained steady as he gave evacuation instructions. Even as the station shook from another barrage over the next 6 hours, Jake worked without rest. He helped families gather their belongings, guided people through damaged corridors, and personally carried an elderly man who couldn't walk fast enough. The human community on Cravo Station was small, but they looked out for each other. By the time he returned to the command center, the situation had grown worse. Half the evacuation transports had been destroyed. The Vortens weren't even trying to capture ships anymore. They were simply killing anyone who tried to leave. This is a massacre, Velkthor said, his scales now a sickly gray color. The Council will respond, but we'll all be dead by then. Lisa stood at the communications console, her hands gripped tight on the edge. She had been trying every diplomatic channel available, but the Vortens refused to even respond. I'm sorry, Velkthor said, turning to face the two humans. I know your government tried to warn the Council about the Vorten threat. We should have listened. Jake exchanged a glance with Lisa. Earth had indeed warned the Galactic Council that the Vortens were becoming more aggressive, but the Council had dismissed human concerns as inexperienced paranoia. How long until they make good on their threat? Jake asked. 4 hours, Velkthor replied. Then they'll start destroying sections of the station, killing everyone aboard. The command center fell silent, except for the quiet beeping of consoles and distant explosions. Jake moved to the observation window and stared out at the Vorten fleet. Their ships were massive and powerful, built for intimidation as much as combat against the station's limited defenses. They were unstoppable. I've sent messages to Earth, Lisa said quietly, moving to stand beside Jake. But our nearest fleet is 5 days away. We won't last that long, Jake replied. Lisa nodded. A reflection in the window showing the same resigned acceptance that Jake felt. They're both known the risks of living this far from human space. There is one thing, Jake said after a long moment. What? Lisa asked. It's probably nothing, Jake said. But 3 months ago, long-range sensors picked up some strange readings in the outer drift. Strange how? Lisa asked. Energy signatures that didn't match any known species. Jake explained. Command dismissed it as sensor errors or natural phenomena. But I've been monitoring that sector, and the readings have been getting stronger. You think someone's out there? Lisa asked. Maybe, Jake said. Or maybe I'm just hoping. Before Lisa could respond, the sensor officer called out, Director, we're detecting a new contact entering the system. Velkther's scales rippled with confusion as he examined the readings. That's impossible, he muttered. There are no council ships within 2 days of here. It's not broadcasting any identification codes, the sensor officer continued. Configuration is unknown. Energy signature doesn't match our database. Jake felt something stir in his chest. Something he hadn't felt in hours. Hope, show me, he ordered. Moving to the sensor console, the display showed a single contact. Smaller than the Vorton warships, but moving with purpose. Its trajectory would bring it directly into the combat zone. There. Heading straight for us, the sensor officer said. Either they're suicidal or they don't understand what they're flying into. Hail them. Velkther ordered. The communications officer tried every standard frequency and protocol. But the ship didn't respond. They're ignoring us, she reported. Or maybe they can't hear us on those frequencies, Jake said thoughtfully. Try older protocols. Go back 50, 60 years. The communications officer looked confused but complied. She cycled through archived communication standards that hadn't been used in decades. Suddenly, a console chirped with an incoming signal. It was fragmented and weak. But definitely there. I've got something, she said excitedly. It's encoded, though. Not standard galactic common. Jake moved closer and listened to the signal. His blood ran cold as recognition hit him. That's an Earth military code, he whispered specifically. Deep space exploration protocol from 40 years ago. Lisa's eyes widened. That's impossible. No human ships use those codes anymore. I know, Jake said, his fingers flying across the console to decode the message. The translation slowly appeared on the screen, and Jake's hands began to shake. What does it say? Velkther demanded. Jake looked up at Lisa. Then at the station director. It says, this is UHSV Valiant, responding to distress signal. Please confirm position and status. The command center erupted in confused voices. The Valiant, Lisa breathed. Jake, that ship was lost 40 years ago. The crew was listed as killed in action. I know, Jake replied, staring at the sensor display where the unknown ship continued its approach. But someone out there is using their codes. Velkther's scales shifted through several colors before settling on deep purple, which Jake had learned indicated extreme confusion. What is UHSV Valiant? The director asked. A deep space exploration vessel. Lisa explained. It was on a long-range mission when it encountered an unstable wormhole. The ship and its crew of 43 were presumed destroyed. That was 40 years ago. Jake added, but that signal is genuine. I'd stake my life on it. Before anyone could respond, the tactical officer shouted a warning. The Vortons have detected the new contact. They're dispatching 3 destroyers to intercept on the display. 3 Vorton ships broke formation and accelerated toward the unknown vessel. We need to warn them, Lisa said urgently. They don't know what they're flying into. Jake opened a channel using the old Earth codes and transmitted a warning about the Vorton ships for a long moment. There was no response. Then the unknown ship's weapon systems came online. Tactical display lit up with power readings that made everyone in the command center stare in disbelief. Those weapon systems, Velkther whispered, they violate at least 6 council treaties. And they're all pointed at the Vorten destroyers. Jake noted the Vorten ships opened fire first. Their plasma cannons lighting up space, the unknown ship didn't even try to evade its shields, absorbed the hits with barely a flicker then. It returned fire. The command center fell silent as they watched the unknown ship's weapons tear through the first Vorten destroyer like it was made of paper. The explosion was massive and brief. The other 2 Vorten ships tried to break off, but it was already too late within 90 seconds. All 3 destroyers were nothing but debris. Jake felt Lisa's hand grip his arm tightly. That was 1 ship against 3 Vorten destroyers, she said quietly. And it didn't even break a sweat. The unknown vessel continued toward Cravo Station at a steady pace. Its weapon systems still active but no longer firing. Then a new transmission came through. This time clear and strong. The voice was human, male, and carried the weight of command. Cravo Station. This is Captain Ryan Hayes of the UHSV Valiant. Sorry we're late. What's your situation? The voice of Captain Ryan Hayes filled the command center with a calm confidence that seemed completely at odds with the desperate situation. Jake Morrison stared at the communications console, his mind struggling to process what he was hearing. The UHSV Valiant had been gone for 40 years, presumed destroyed with all hands, yet here was her captain, speaking as if he'd just arrived from Earth. Captain Hayes, Jake responded, forcing his voice to remain professional despite his shock. This is Commander Jake Morrison, UN Liaison Officer at Cravo Station. We're under siege by a Vorten separatist fleet. 20 capital ships have us surrounded. Station shields are failing. And we have 70,000 civilians trapped on board. There was a brief pause before Ryan replied, Copy that. Commander, we picked up your distress signal 3 days ago and came as fast as we could. Looks like we got here just in time. Lisa Chun moved closer to the communication station, her diplomatic training keeping her composed even as her hands trembled slightly. Captain Hayes, this is Ambassador Lisa Chun. I need to inform you that according to Earth records, the UHSV Valiant was lost 40 years ago. Can you verify your identity? Another pause. Longer this time when Ryan spoke again. His voice carried a hint of sadness. I understand your confusion. Ambassador, it's been a long time for us too. Verification code. Hayes-Ryan-7-3-Alpha-9. Commission date March 15th, 2185. Jake quickly checked the historical records stored in the station's database. Every detail matched perfectly. Identity confirmed, he said quietly. Captain, where have you been? That's a long story, Commander. Ryan replied, short version. We encountered an unstable wormhole that pulled us into uncharted space. We've been trying to find our way home ever since. 40 years. Lisa whispered, You've been lost for 40 years. 40 years for you. Ambassador, Ryan said. For us, it's been about the same. Though time gets strange near some of the anomalies we encountered, we can swap stories later. Right now, you've got more immediate problems. Station Director Velkther, who had been listening in stunned silence, finally found his voice. Captain Hayes, this is Station Director Velkther. I must inform you that you are vastly outnumbered. The Vorten fleet consists of 20 warships, each more than capable of destroying your vessel. I appreciate your concern, Director, Ryan said. And Jake could hear the faint smile in his voice. But my crew and I have faced worse odds than this. We'll handle the Vortens. You focus on getting those civilians to safety on the tactical display. The Valiant continued its approach toward Cravo Station. The Vorten fleet was beginning to react. With several ships moving to intercept positions, Admiral Krenth, the Vorten commander, broadcast on an open channel. His voice was harsh and filled with arrogance. Unidentified human vessel. You have destroyed 3 of my ships. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. This is your only warning. Ryan's response was immediate and utterly calm. Admiral Krenth. This is Captain Ryan Hayes of the UHSV Valiant. You are currently engaged in an illegal siege of a civilian station. You have 30 seconds to withdraw your forces, or I will be forced to remove them. The command center fell silent. Even the background noise of systems and alerts seemed to fade. Admiral Krenth's laughter came through the speakers. Cool and mocking. 1 ship against my entire fleet. Your human arrogance knows no bounds. You have chosen death. So be it, Ryan replied, his voice still maddeningly calm. Valiant out. The tactical display showed the Vorten fleet beginning to form up for a coordinated assault. 17 capital ships moved into attack positions while 3 remained near the station as a blocking force. Captain Hayes, please reconsider, Velkther urged. Your ship may be powerful, but you cannot win against those numbers. Director, with all due respect, you don't know what this ship can do, Ryan said. My crew and I have spent 40 years fighting our way through unknown space. We face species you've never heard of, survived situations that should have killed us, and learned things about warfare that the Galactic Council hasn't even dreamed of. The Vortens are about to learn what happens when humans decide to fight. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. There was something in Ryan's voice, something hard and unyielding, that spoke of experiences no one in the Galactic Council could imagine. All personnel, clear the observation decks. Velkther ordered. This is going to get violent. The Vorten fleet opened fire space lit up with plasma cannons, missile launches, and energy beams as 17 warships unleashed everything they had at the single human vessel. The sensor displays went wild with energy readings. They're going to tear that ship apart, the tactical officer said, unable to hide the horror in her voice. But when the light faded and the sensors cleared, the Valiant was still there. Its shields had held against the entire barrage without even flickering. Impossible. Velkther breath. No single ship can withstand that kind of firepower. Captain Hayes can, Jake said quietly, watching the display with growing amazement. The Valiant's weapons came alive. The ship carried an array of armaments that Jake had never seen before. A hybrid of human technology and something else entirely. Point defense lasers created a web of destruction around the ship, intercepting missiles and torpedoes with perfect accuracy. Plasma cannons fired in precise bursts, each shot calibrated to overwhelm Vorten shields. But it was the main weapons that truly shocked everyone. Beams of pure energy, brighter and more focused than anything in the Galactic Council arsenal, lanced out from the Valiant. The first beam struck a Vorten cruiser dead center. The ship's shields collapsed instantly, and the beam punched through the hull like it was paper. The cruiser exploded in a massive fireball. One shot, Lisa whispered. It destroyed a Vorten cruiser. With one shot, the Valiant didn't slow down or pause to assess damage. It moved through space with a grace and purpose that seemed impossible for a ship its size. Another beam fired, and another Vorten ship died. They're using the Vorten fleet's own formation against them, the tactical officer said, admiration creeping into her voice. Every time the Vortens try to get a clear shot, their own ships are in the way. Jake watched in awe as the Valiant danced through the Nendirades for Jane battlefield. It wasn't just the weapons or the shields. It was the way the ship moved. Whoever was piloting knew exactly when to accelerate, when to turn, when to use the enemy's mass and momentum against them. How is this possible? Velkther asked. How can one crew be this effective? They've had 40 years to practice, Lisa said softly. 40 years fighting unknown enemies in unknown space. They've become something the galaxy has never seen before. The Vorton fleet was in chaos now. Admiral Krent screamed orders over open channels, demanding his ships maintain formation and focus fire, but the Valiant was everywhere at once. Never where the Vortons expected, another cruiser exploded, then a destroyer within 10 minutes. The Vorton fleet had lost 6 ships. "They're going to win," Jake said, disbelief and hope mixing in his voice. One human ship is going to defeat an entire Vorton fleet. But the Vortons weren't finished yet. Admiral Krent, desperate and furious, made a tactical change. 3 of his remaining ships broke off from engaging the Valiant and turned toward Cravo Station. There, targeting the station, the tactical officer shouted, "Shields are almost gone. We can't survive a direct assault." Jake's heart sank as he watched the Vorton ships accelerate toward them. Their weapons were charging, preparing to unleash devastation on the helpless civilians. Then the Valiant moved. The ship accelerated so quickly that the sensors barely tracked it. It positioned itself directly between the Vorton ships and Cravo Station captain. "No," Lisa called out. "You'll be caught in a crossfire. Protecting civilians is what we do." "Ambassador," Ryan replied calmly, "hang on. This might get rough." The 3 Vorton ships fired everything they had at point-blank range. The Valiant's shields flared bright blue as they absorbed. Hit after hit alarms sounded in the command center as energy readings spiked. "Their shields are holding," the tactical officer said, "but they're taking massive damage." The Valiant returned fire. Even while under assault, its weapons never stopped, never hesitated. One Vorton ship lost power and began to drift. Another took a direct hit to its reactor and exploded. The third tried to retreat, but the Valiant's guns found it anyway when the firing stopped. All 3 Vorton ships were destroyed or disabled. The Valiant's shields flickered and stabilized. "Damage report," Jake heard Ryan say over an open channel. A female voice responded, calm and professional. "Shields at 60%. Captain, hull breaches on decks 7 and 9. Already sealed. We're still in the fight. Good work." "Nicole," Ryan said, "let's finish this." The remaining Vorton fleet was down to 11 ships now, and their formation was in shambles. Admiral Krent's voice came over the channel again. But this time, the arrogance was gone. Fear had replaced it. "All ships, full retreat," he ordered. "Get us out of here." But Ryan wasn't going to let them escape that easily. "Attention, Vorton fleet," he broadcast. "You came here to murder innocent civilians. You don't get to just leave." The Valiant pursued the fleeing ships, its weapons picking them off one by one. Some of the Vorton vessels managed to jump to faster-than-light speeds and escape. Others weren't fast enough by the time the battle ended. Only 4 Vorton ships had successfully fled. The rest were either destroyed or drifting in space, their crews scrambling for escape pods. The command center of Cravo Station erupted in cheers. Docking Bay 7 was packed with people from every corner of Cravo Station. Humans made up only a small portion of the crowd, but their excitement was obvious. Jake Morrison stood near the front with Ambassador Lisa Chun and Station Director Velkthur, watching as the massive airlock cycled through its sequence. The UHSV Valiant had barely fit in the station's largest docking port up close. The ship looked nothing like it had when it left Earth 40 years ago. The hull was covered in strange modifications and patches of metal that didn't match any known human alloy. Weapon mounts dotted the surface in configurations that would make Council engineers nervous. Whatever had happened to this ship during its decades away from home had fundamentally changed it. "I'm still having trouble believing this is real," Lisa said quietly. "The Valiant was my sister's favorite ship when we were kids. She had a poster of it on her bedroom wall. Now here it is, returned from the dead." The airlock finished cycling, and the heavy doors began to open. The crowd fell silent with anticipation. Captain Ryan Hayes was the first to step through. He looked younger than Jake expected for someone who had been gone 40 years. Time dilation effects from the wormhole, maybe. Or just good genetics. Ryan wore a modified version of the old Earth Space Force uniform, patched and repaired countless times. His dark hair was cut short, and his brown eyes scanned the crowd with the careful awareness of someone who had learned to always check for threats. Behind him came his crew. Lieutenant Nicole Stevens was a tall woman with red hair pulled back in a practical bun. Her tactical officer uniform showed the same signs of long use and careful maintenance as her captain's engineer Danny Wright followed, a stocky man with oil stains on his hands, and a easy smile. Pilot Ashley Martinez moved with fluid grace, her keen eyes taking in every detail of the station. The rest of the crew filed out. 43 men and women who had been declared decades ago. They looked tired and weathered, but their faces showed pride and relief. Several crew members stopped and stared at the crowd, tears streaming down their faces. One young man dropped to his knees, overwhelmed by the sight of so many people after years in isolation. Jake stepped forward and saluted Captain Hayes on behalf of the human residents of Krovo Station and the Galactic Council. "Welcome." Ryan returned the salute with precision that spoke of military discipline that had never faded. "Thank you, Commander. It's good to see friendly faces again." Velkther approached, his scales shifting to a respectful deep blue. "Captain Hayes, I am Station Director Velkther. I must express my deepest gratitude for your intervention. You saved 70,000 lives today." Ryan shook the director's offered hand, careful of the aliens' different physiology. "We heard the distress call and came as quickly as we could. That's what humans do." Lisa stepped forward next, her diplomatic training keeping her composed despite her emotions. "Captain, I'm Ambassador Lisa Chun, Earth's diplomatic representative in this sector. I've already sent word to Fleet Command about your return. They're sending ships to escort you home." Ryan's expression softened slightly. "How long until they arrive?" 4 days. Lisa replied, "The nearest fleet is in the Centauri system." 4 days? Ryan repeated quietly, glancing back at his crew. "We can wait 4 days. We've waited 40 years already." Jake led the group to a private conference room that Velkther had prepared. The valiant senior officers joined them, while the rest of the crew were shown to temporary quarters. Once everyone was seated, Ryan began his story. 40 years ago, the Valiant was on a deep space exploration mission near the outer drift. He said, "We were studying gravitational anomalies when we detected what we thought was a stable wormhole. Command authorized us to send a probe through. The readings looked good, so I made the call to take the ship through ourselves." He paused, his hands clasped on the table. "It wasn't stable. The wormhole collapsed as we were passing through. We were pulled into a region of space that wasn't on any star charts. Nothing looked familiar. The stars were all wrong." Nicole Stevens picked up the story. "We spent the first 6 months just trying to figure out where we were. Our navigation systems were useless. We had enough supplies for a 2-year mission, but we had no idea how to get home." Danny Wright leaned forward, his voice carrying the weight of difficult memories. "We encountered our first alien species 8 months in. They weren't friendly. They saw our ship and decided we'd make a good target. We barely survived that first engagement. Our weapons weren't designed for real combat." Ashley added, "We were an exploration vessel, not a warship, but Captain Hayes had us strip down every system we didn't absolutely need and converted them to weapons and shields." Ryan continued the narrative. "Over the next few years, we encountered 7 different species. Some were peaceful and willing to trade. We learned about their technology, their cultures, their history. Others were hostile, We had to fight our way through several territorial disputes. 40 years, Lisa said softly. You've been at war for 40 years. Not constantly, Ryan replied. There were long stretches of peace. We found a few friendly civilizations that helped us. The modifications you see on the Valiant are a combination of technologies from different species. This hybrid power system came from the Kellerth, a race of engineers who took pity on us. The shield generators are based on Theran technology. The weapons are our own design, but they use principles we learned from multiple sources. Velkther had been listening intently, his scales rippling with various colors as different emotions passed through him. Captain, I must ask an uncomfortable question. The weapon systems on your vessel are extremely powerful. They violate several Galactic Council treaties regarding military armament. Ryan's expression hardened slightly. Director, with all due respect, the Galactic Council's treaties didn't mean much where we were. We had to survive. And that meant building weapons that could protect us against any threat. I understand your concern, and I'm willing to discuss this with Earth's government when we return. But I won't apologize for keeping my crew alive. I'm not asking you to apologize. Velkther said quickly, I'm simply stating facts that will need to be addressed. Understood. Ryan replied. Jake had been studying the crew members, noticing details that told stories of hardship and perseverance. Captain, can I ask how you maintained discipline and morale for 40 years? Ryan smiled. The first genuine smile Jake had seen from him. That's the easy part. Commander, we became a family. When you're the only humans in an entire region of space, you either pull together or fall apart. We chose to pull together. Nicole spoke up, her voice warm with affection. We celebrated birthdays, holidays, and milestones. Danny here taught half the crew how to play guitar. Ashley started a book club that's still going strong. We have marriages and... Yes, children. Children, Lisa said, her eyes widening. You have children on your ship. 4. Ryan confirmed, born during our journey. They've never seen Earth. Never met another human outside our crew. They're going to have quite an adjustment ahead of them. The weight of that statement settled over the room. These weren't just explorers who had found their way home. They were refugees from another corner of space, changed by decades of experiences that no one else could truly understand. Captain, why didn't you head straight for Earth? Jake asked. You clearly knew where you were. Your navigation systems were working. Ryan met his gaze steadily. We picked up Kravo Station's distress signal 3 days ago. We were about a week from reaching human space. But when we heard that civilians were in danger, the crew voted unanimously to divert and help. That decision cost you days. Lisa noted, your families have been waiting 40 years to see you. And they'll wait a few more days, Ryan said firmly. We don't leave people in danger. Not when we can help. That's not negotiable. Velkther's scales turned a deep purple color that Jake had learned indicated profound respect. Captain Hayes, your crew's actions today will be remembered for generations. You faced overwhelming odds without hesitation. You protected civilians at great risk to yourselves. This is the highest form of courage. We did what anyone should do. Ryan replied, though I'll admit, after 40 years of fighting, it felt good to fight for something clear and simple. No political complications. No territorial disputes. Just people who needed help. The conversation continued for another hour. Ryan and his officers shared more details about their journey, careful to avoid classified information, but giving enough detail to paint a picture of incredible hardship and perseverance. They had fought pirates and raiders. They had negotiated with alien empires. They had discovered new physics principles and engineering techniques. They had survived disasters that should have destroyed them, and through it all, They had held on to their humanity and their principles as the meeting wound down. Lisa made arrangements for the crew's needs medical care for those who needed it. Proper food, communication equipment to send messages to Earth Captain. "There's one more thing," Velkthur said as everyone prepared to leave. "The Vorten separatists will want revenge for their losses today. Your ship made them look weak. Let them come." Ryan said simply, "We'll be here for 4 days waiting for the Earth fleet. If the Vortens want another lesson, we're happy to provide it." Jake walked Ryan and his officers back to the docking bay. Along the way, station residents stopped to thank them, to shake their hands, to simply see the humans. The Galactic Council fleet arrived at Cravo Station 2 days after the battle. Admiral Greg Peterson commanded the human contingent. 3 cruisers and 2 destroyers that represented Earth's growing military presence in Council Space's ships took up protective positions around the station while he transferred over to meet with the legendary crew. Everyone was talking about. Jig Morrison watched from the observation deck as Peterson's shuttle approached. The Admiral had sent several messages ahead, each one more excited than the last. The return of the Valiant was the biggest news to hit Earth in decades. "Commander Morrison, the Admiral's shuttle is docking now," the communications officer announced. Jake made his way to the docking bay, where Ryan Hayes and his senior staff were waiting. The Valiant's captain stood with the same calm presence he'd shown since arriving. But Jake had learned to read the subtle tension in his posture. Meeting with Fleet Command meant facing questions about the modifications to his ship and the choices he'd made over 40 years. The airlock opened and Admiral Peterson strode through. He was a tall man in his 60s with gray hair and the bearing of someone who had spent his entire life in space. His eyes went straight to Ryan, and for a moment, he just stared. "Captain Hayes," Peterson said, his voice thick with emotion, "I served under your father when I was a junior officer. He never gave up hope that you'd come home." Ryan's composure wavered. "My father, is he?" Peterson shook his head sadly. "He passed away 5 years ago, but he made sure the search for the Valiant continued. Every deep space mission had orders to watch for any sign of your ship." Ryan closed his eyes briefly, processing the loss. When he opened them again, they were harder. "He was a good man. I'm sorry I didn't make it back in time. He knew the risks of deep space exploration." Peterson said, "He was proud of you until the end." The Admiral stepped forward and embraced Ryan in a gesture that transcended military protocol. When they separated, Peterson looked at the assembled crew. "All of you, you're heroes back home. The entire planet is waiting to welcome you. We're just explorers who got lost." "Sir," Nicole Stevens said quietly, "explorers who fought your way through unknown space for 4 decades and came home to save 70,000 lives." Peterson countered, "That's not just survival. That's excellence." He turned back to Ryan. "Captain, I need to discuss your ship. The weapon systems you've installed are causing quite a stir in Fleet Command." "I imagine they are," Ryan replied. "We're willing to share everything we've learned. But I need assurances that my crew won't be punished for doing what was necessary to survive." Peterson smiled. "Punished?" "Captain, Fleet Command wants to give you all medals and then pick your brains about every technological advancement you've made. The political types are nervous, but the military leadership understands exactly what you accomplished over the next several hours." Ryan and his officers presented detailed reports about their journey. They had documentation of every species they'd encountered, every technological discovery, every tactical lesson learned in combat. Danny Wright explained the hybrid power systems that allowed the Valiant to generate 3 times the energy of a standard Council warship. Nicole Stevens walked through their weapon systems, carefully detailing which components came from alien technology and which were human innovations Ashley Martinez demonstrated. Navigation techniques they developed for traveling through unstable regions of space. The information was staggering. 40 years of accumulated knowledge that could advance human technology by decades, but it was Ryan's tactical analysis that truly captured Peterson's attention. The Galactic Council fights wars like they're playing chess, Ryan explained, displaying a tactical map, predictable movements, standard formations, rules of engagement that prioritize minimizing losses over achieving objectives. It works fine when everyone follows the same rules. But the species we encountered out there don't follow those rules. They fight to win, by any means necessary. He pulled up recordings from the battle with the Vorton fleet. Watch how we moved through their formation. Council doctrine says you never put yourself between enemy ships because you'll be caught in crossfire. But if your shields are strong enough and your targeting is precise enough, being in the middle of their formation makes you harder to hit and easier to pick them off one by one. Peterson studied the recordings with growing amazement. You're using their mass against them. Their own ships become obstacles. Exactly. Ryan confirmed, and we're constantly moving, never staying in one position long enough for them to coordinate their fire. It requires split-second timing and absolute trust in your crew. But it works. This is brilliant, Peterson said. Unconventional, aggressive, and completely at odds with Council military doctrine. But brilliant. We learned from the best teachers. Necessity and survival, Ryan said. When you're outnumbered and outgunned, you can't afford to fight fair. The discussion continued for hours, with Peterson's staff taking notes on everything finally. The Admiral stood and stretched. Captain Hayes, I think we have enough to keep our analysts busy for months. But there's one more thing I need to address. He pulled out a datapad and handed it to Ryan. These are orders from Fleet Command. The Valiant is to be escorted back to Earth for a full refit and evaluation. Your crew will be given medical examinations, psychological assessments, and then extended leave. Ryan read through the orders carefully, and after that, the Valiant will be recommissioned as an active military vessel. If you are willing to take command again, Peterson said, Fleet Command wants to build more ships based on your designs. They're calling it the Valiant class. Fast, heavily armed, and designed for deep space operations. You'd be training the next generation of crews. Ryan looked at his officers, who had gathered around to hear the news. What do you all think? Danny spoke first. I didn't spend 40 years keeping this ship running just to retire. Captain, I'm in. Nicole nodded. Someone needs to teach these Council fleets how to actually fight. Might as well be us, Ashley grinned. I've gotten used to flying the best ship in the galaxy. I'm not about to give that up. One by one, the crew members voiced their agreement. They had become so much more than a crew. They were a family bound by shared hardship, and triumph. Ryan turned back to Peterson. Then we accept. Admiral, the Valiant and her crew are ready to serve. The following 2 days passed quickly. The Valiant's crew spent time with the station's residents, sharing stories and building friendships. The human civilians on Cravo Station treated them like celebrities. But Ryan's crew remained humble and approachable. Jake found Ryan in the observation deck late one evening. Captain stood alone, staring out at the stars. Couldn't sleep, Jake asked. Too many thoughts. Ryan admitted 40 years is a long time to be away. I keep wondering what else has changed. Jake joined him at the window. A lot has changed. Captain, Earth has expanded into 12 new systems. We have 3 times as many people living off-world as when you left. Technology has advanced in ways you'll barely recognize. But some things haven't changed. We still value courage, honor, and the willingness to help others. Ryan smiled slightly. That's good to hear. For a while out there, I wondered if we'd forgotten what it meant to be human. If survival had stripped away everything else. But your crew proved that wrong. Jake said, you could have gone straight home. You could have prioritized your own reunion with Earth over helping strangers. But you didn't. Couldn't. Ryan corrected. My crew wouldn't have let me even if I'd suggested it. We heard people in trouble, and we responded. That's not heroism. That's just being decent. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Watching ships move around the station finally, Ryan spoke again. Commander, can I ask you something? Of course. What's Earth really like now? Is it still home? Jake considered the question carefully. I think home is less about places and more about people. Your crew. Your families. The humans who never forgot about you. Earth will be different. But the people waiting for you are still the same in the ways that matter. Ryan nodded slowly. I hope you're right. I've told my crew so many stories about Earth over the years. I'd hate for the reality to disappoint them. I don't think it will. Jake assured him, Earth has grown, but its heart hasn't changed. The next morning, the Earth fleet prepared to depart. The entire station turned out to say goodbye to the Valiant, and her crew Valthor presented Ryan with a Medal of Honor. The highest civilian award the Galactic Council could bestow Captain Hayes. You and your crew have reminded us all of what it means to stand up for others. The director said, Cravo Station will never forget what you did for us. Ryan accepted the medal with quiet dignity. Director, serving with your people has been an honor. We came here as strangers, but we leave as friends. Lisa-chan stepped forward next. Captain, I've received word from Earth. Your family is waiting at the orbital station. They've been preparing for your arrival for days. Ryan's hands trembled slightly as he took the information. Thank you, Ambassador, for everything. The crew filed back onto the Valiant for the last time before heading home. Jake walked with Ryan to the airlock. Captain, it's been an honor serving with you, even briefly. The honor is mine. Commander, Ryan replied. You and your team made us feel welcome when we needed it most. They shook hands, and Ryan entered the airlock minutes later. The Valiant undocked from Cravo Station. The journey to Earth took 6 days at standard fleet speeds. Ryan Hayes stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching the familiar blue-green planet grow larger on the view screen. 40 years had passed since he'd last seen home for his crew. It had been the same amount of time, but for Earth, those decades had brought enormous change. Captain, we're receiving docking instructions for Armstrong Orbital Station. Nagel Stevens reported from the tactical console. They're giving us priority clearance. Ryan nodded, his throat tight with emotion. Take us in. Ashley. Aye, Captain. Ashley Martinez replied, her hands steady on the controls despite the trembling in her voice. The entire crew was on the bridge. Against regulations, but no one had the hard-to-enforce protocol right now. They had waited 40 years. For this moment, the Valiant moved through Earth's orbital traffic with careful precision. Hundreds of ships filled near our space. Far more than Ryan remembered. Massive stations hung in orbit like jewels, each one larger than anything that had existed when the Valiant left. Look at it all. Danny Wright breathed. Earth really did keep growing. There must be 10 times as many stations as when we left. 12 times, Nicole corrected, reading from her console. Population in Earth orbit is over 50 million now. 50 million, one of the crew members whispered. That's more than some entire planets in council space. Armstrong Station grew larger on the view screen. It was a massive structure, easily 5 kilometers across, with dozens of docking ports and what looked like shipyards extending from its central hub. Armstrong Station to UHSV Valiant. We have you on final approach, a voice said over the communications channel. Welcome home. Captain Hayes, we've been waiting a long time for this. Thank you, Armstrong, Ryan replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. It's good to be home. The docking procedure was smooth and professional. The Valiant settled into a berth designed for ships twice its size. But the station crew made accommodations as the airlock cycled. Ryan turned to face his crew. Listen up, everyone. In a few minutes, we're going to step off this ship and onto Earth soil for the first time in 40 years. Some of you have family waiting. Some don't. But all of you are heroes. And you deserve to be proud of what we accomplished. We survived when we should have died. We thrived when we should have merely endured. And we came home not because it was easy, but because we never gave up. The crew stood at attention, tears streaming down many faces. It's been an honor to serve with all of you. Ryan continued, you are the best crew any captain could ask for. Now let's go see what we've been fighting to get back to. The airlock opened, and Ryan stepped through first. The docking bay beyond was packed with people, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all pressing against barriers that security personnel struggled to maintain. Banners hung from the ceiling, welcoming the Valiant. Home cameras floated everywhere, recording every moment. But Ryan's eyes found one person in the crowd immediately. A woman in her 50s stood at the front of the barriers, tears streaming down her face. She had his eyes and his mother's smile. Katie. Ryan whispered. His daughter pushed past the security barrier and ran to him. Ryan met her halfway, wrapping his arms around the little girl who had grown into a woman while he was gone. Dad. Katie sobbed into his shoulder. You're really here. You're really home. I'm sorry I was gone so long, Ryan said, his own tears flowing freely. I'm so sorry. You're here now, Katie replied. That's all that matters. Behind them, the rest of the crew reunited with their families, husbands and wives who had aged decades, children who were now adults with families of their own, parents who had never given up hope. The docking bay filled with the sounds of crying and laughter and joy. Danny Wright embraced his brother, both men weeping. Nicole Stevens met her grandmother, now in her 90s, but still sharp and strong. Ashley Martinez held her nephew, who had been 2 years old when she left and was now a man of 40. Torian stood with Katie for a long time before she finally pulled back and gestured to two people standing nearby. Dad, I want you to meet someone. A man in his 40s stepped forward with a teenage girl. This is my husband, Paul, and your granddaughter, Emma. Ryan's legs nearly gave out. A granddaughter. He had a granddaughter. Emma looked nervous but excited as she approached. Grandpa. Hi, Emma, Ryan managed to say. It's so good to meet you. Mom told me all about you. Emma said, about the Valiant and your mission. I wrote a school report about you last year. Ryan laughed through his tears. I hope I got a good grade. A plus. Emma confirmed with a shy smile. The due family reunion was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Peterson and several other high-ranking military officials. Captain Hayes. I'm sorry to intrude, Peterson said, but Fleet Command is requesting your presence for a briefing. Ryan looked at Katie apologetically. Duty calls. Go, Katie said, squeezing his hand. We'll be here when you're done. We've waited 40 years. We can wait a few more hours. Ryan followed Peterson through the station to a secure conference room. Inside waited a dozen admirals and civilian officials, representing both Fleet Command and Earth's government. Captain Hayes. Please have a seat, said Admiral Sarah Chun, the commander of Earth Fleet. We have much to discuss for the next 3 hours. Ryan briefed the assembled leadership on everything the Valiant had encountered. He provided technical specifications for their modified systems, tactical analyses of combat engagements, and diplomatic assessments of the alien species they'd met. The officials listened with rapt attention, occasionally asking questions, but mostly just absorbing the wealth of information. Captain, your ship has technology that's decades ahead of our current fleet, Admiral Chun finally said. The hybrid power systems alone would revolutionize our energy production. And your weapon systems are more powerful than anything we fielded. We learned from necessity. Ryan replied, every modification was made because we needed it to survive. We understand that, said a civilian official named Marcus Gray. But you must understand what this means politically. The Galactic Council has strict treaties about military armament. Your ship violates at least 6 of them. The Council didn't help us when we were lost, Ryan said, his voice hardening. They didn't send search parties or rescue missions. We were on our own. And we did what we had to do. I'm not apologizing for that, nor should you. Admiral Chun said quickly, but we need to figure out how to handle this diplomatically. The Council will want answers, then tell them the truth. Ryan suggested, tell them that humanity takes care of its own, that we don't abandon our people, and we don't let others dictate how we defend ourselves. The room fell silent finally. Marcus Gray spoke. Captain, you've given us a lot to think about. Your crew will be given a month of leave while we conduct medical evaluations and complete the debriefing process. After that, we'll discuss the future of the Valiant and your role in Fleet Command. Ryan stood and saluted. Thank you, sir. He returned to the docking bay to find his family waiting patiently. Katie had brought more relatives, cousins, aunts, uncles, all wanting to meet the legendary captain who had returned from the dead. Over the next few days, the Valiant crew became Earth's biggest news story. Interviews, ceremonies, and public appearances filled their schedules, but Ryan insisted that his crew get the rest they deserved. He personally attended every event, shielding his people from the worst of the media attention. A week after arriving home, Ryan stood with Admiral Peterson at a memorial wall in Fleet Command headquarters. The wall listed every ship and crew lost in the line of duty. The UHSV Valiant had its own section, with all 43 crew members listed as killed in action. We're going to move this to the historical section. Peterson said, it'll still be honored, but it won't be among the current casualties. Ryan ran his fingers over the engraved names. I want to add 4 more names. Peterson looked confused. Your crew is all here, not the crew we started with. Ryan said, 4 people died during our journey. 2 in combat, 1 from illness, 1 in an accident. They gave their lives so the rest of us could make it home. They deserve to be remembered. Peterson nodded solemnly. Of course, we'll make sure they're honored properly. Ryan spent the afternoon adding the details about the 4 crew members who hadn't made it home. Their sacrifices had made the Valiant's return possible. That evening, Ryan returned to Katie's apartment. She had insisted he stay with her family rather than in temporary quarters. The normality of it was jarring after 40 years in space. Dinner with family, watching Emma do homework, simple conversations about everyday life. You seem restless, Katie observed as they sat on her balcony overlooking the city. I am, Ryan admitted. Everything is so different. The technology, the politics, even the language has changed. There are words people use now that didn't exist when I left. Is it too much? Katie asked gently. No, Ryan said, or maybe yes, but in a good way. For 40 years, I told the crew stories about Earth. I built it up in my mind as this perfect place we were fighting to return to. I was worried reality wouldn't match the dream. And does it? Ryan smiled. It's better. Because you're here. Because I get to know my granddaughter. Because home isn't about places or technology. It's about people. Katie took his hand. What are you going to do now? Fleet Command wants me to train new crews to help build ships based on the Valiant's design. Are you going to do it? Ryan thought about it carefully. Yes, but not right away.